Hello, and welcome to Spotlight On, the podcast that brings together business leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts covering a range of topics. I'm Nicholas Barton, founder and CEO of the Barton Partnership. We're an award-winning executive recruitment and consulting solutions firm providing permanent search and independent consulting services across strategy, sustainability and M&A, data and analytics, and transformation and change.
Hi all, Mike Fritz from the Barton Partnership here. Welcome to our next edition of the Spotlight podcast. In this episode, I'm very excited to be joined by Andrew Wesbecher, Global Vice President of Sales and Channels at Traceable. Andrew, great to see you and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Even before hopping in, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Based in Silicon Valley, just south of the city here in San Francisco. Been in enterprise software sales for 23 years, specifically focused on hard tech like infrastructure, data center networking, network performance monitoring, security, AppSec, and now APIs.
Excellent. And can you tell us a little bit about your current company?
So I work for Jyoti Bansal, who is was the former CEO and founder of AppDynamics, which he scaled and sold to Cisco for $3.7 billion in 2017. After that, he started a company called Harness, which is in the DevOps automation space. That's about $100 million in ARR. Then he founded Traceable, which is in the API security space, addressing a series of nascent new challenges as companies move to microservices and front their applications via APIs. Jyoti is also the managing director and founder of a VC fund called Unusual Ventures. Traceable today is about 165 employees. We're growing quite quickly to address some of the challenges that large enterprise have as they, as mentioned, move to microservices. Those microservices are all interconnected via APIs. And so we believe that the API has become the world's largest unsecured attack surface. And so just like CrowdStrike and SentinelOne with EDR and XDR, an API is effectively just another endpoint within your IT assets that you as an enterprise organization need to enforce the appropriate security controls for. So we address a series of use cases, whether it's inventorying your APIs, understanding their risk posture, testing them for vulnerabilities, and providing detection and protection capabilities at runtime for your production applications that utilize APIs, both externally facing, and those that are behind the firewall that are interconnecting all of your APIs or your microservices. Some of our customers include very large businesses like American Express, PayPal, Bank of America, Informatica, and a litany of others. And so we've really focused exclusively on selling to the CISOs, the VPs of AppSec, the VPs of data security of the largest enterprises. So Fortune 500, even Fortune 100 are really experiencing the security pains and challenges associated with this concept of API sprawl. So that's what we do here.
Great overview. And it's interesting because I feel as though we're always in this evolving and ever-changing paradigm shift within the landscape of cybersecurity, where, from the early days of network security and firewalls to endpoint to cloud security, and thinking about what those threats look like that keeps the market ever-changing. Are there certain threats that have always been consistent within security but maybe changed shape over time? Or are you seeing actually more new threats to organizations as a whole?
Yeah, so all of the typical vulnerabilities and attack pathways that have been used by threat actors over the last 20 plus years, whether it's cross-site scripting, SQL injection, NoSQL injection, man-in-the-middle attacks, all of those attacks that could be, used against a network firewall, used against a front-end application, used against, a network device. All of those same attacks can be used to exploit an API. So we solve for the legacy attack vectors that have now applied themselves to microservices and APIs. But there are, to your point, a series of new exploits specific to an API. One of them is known as broken object level authorization, or BOLA. What that is a threat actor is effectively tricking the authorization system of an API to bypass that authorization to get access to services and data that lie beyond that API. And that is hard for most security vendors to detect and protect against, because every API is its own snowflake. It has its own policies for authorization, authentication, data access policies, et cetera. And so our model is applying a combination of signature-based detection and protection capabilities with machine learning-based anomaly detection capabilities that are designed to detect these sort of nouveau attack vectors targeting APIs, as I mentioned, this concept of BOLA, otherwise known as IDOR, which are very, very complex attack vectors and something that any organization that's dealing with microservices that has some semblance of sensitive data that they're transiting via their APIs, they are not immune to these nouveau API style of attacks. So that's what we address.
It's interesting as you mentioned the word new, whether with threats or types of products and companies. You're someone who's done this for 20 plus years now, scaled multiple early stage businesses and seen acquisitions. When you think about joining a new early stage business at various points in your career, especially when it's a new player in the space, because almost any company could say, hey, we're new, we're different, but with you, like whether you're selling to the same types of buyers or maybe new buyers, depending on the type of product, as you think about breaking into a new market, building a go-to-market plan, building pipeline from scratch and net new revenue, where does that really start with breaking in for the first time with new customers as a new early stage company?
The first thing that you really need to understand is that there is an ocean of very well-funded startup companies here in the Valley, New York, abroad, in Austin, et cetera, that are products that are searching for a problem. And that's a recipe for not having a good time at that startup. And so what you really need to focus on when you evaluate any new opportunity, whether it's a CRO role, a CFO role, a VP of engineering role, what is the real driving and organic need and pain that the product is solving? If there isn't what I refer to as a through line of customer value across many different prospective customers, where you can codify 2 or 3 repeatable use cases that serve a very compelling, expensive, and urgent customer pain, that is what you need as an employee or a prospective employee or a prospective executive at a new company. You need to evaluate at the core of everything you do, take the product aside, where is the customer's house on fire? Where is the customer pain? What urgency is driving the need to solve that pain, whether it's compliance or risk, or some CISO is having a career acceleration path and they want to innovate in their security control apparatus. And so that's the first thing, is you look at the nucleus of everything is what is the really burning, expensive problem that the customer is trying to solve, and validate that across multiple different prospective customers. Then that informs your product strategy, your messaging, and a lot of your go-to-market. And sort of that, these are concentric circles. At the nucleus of this is what is the customer value, the customer pain that you're solving for. The concentric circle around that is what is the product that effectively and elegantly addresses those customer pains in an organic fashion. And then the concentric circle around that is what is the go-to-market messaging, the go-to-market approach, whether it's outbound, whether it's PLG, bottoms up, whether it's channel driven. All of that is informed by that nucleus, which is what is the burning house on fire problem that the customer is trying to solve. And so when I talk to other executives or people that are looking to make a move in their career, I always suggest that you really do your diligence in really understanding the customer pain, because a lot of VCs, a lot of investors, for better or worse, they don't do that. They don't do their diligence deeply enough on sort of the customer pain and urgency associated with solving that pain.
And I know I've mentioned it to you several times now, but even looking back on the first few conversations that we've had, it always stood out to me the amount of diligence that you do on a product itself, from its technicality to the business itself, and as it pertains to how you take it to market. I mean, I've learned a lot from every conversation we've had, and so many elements from our discussions that I take with myself as search work, because again, it's not necessarily sales, but again, adjacent industries with presenting opportunities to candidates. So with you, when you think about your role within, technology changing overall and really everyone's day-to-day changing recently, how has your role changed from the first time you stepped into a sales leadership position compared to as you think about your role today?
I am Gen X. So the first thing is there is in terms of leadership style, there is a generational shift in terms of just culturally the way that we managed sales teams in 2005 versus 2023 are very different. I come from an old school, very aggressive, you better smile and dial, put up the numbers, and talk to me when you've delivered something. That very aggressive sales leadership style doesn't work with millennials and Gen Z. They get turned off to it. And as a leader, you as a 44-year-old Gen Xer, I recognize that I needed to shift and have more of a softer approach or a more empathetic approach to leadership. And so I learned that over the last, I would say, 10 years, which is I really view my role as a sales executive, CRO, go-to-market executive as a servant leader, especially for the individuals that we've hired, we've recruited, we've enabled. My job is I report to the CEO, I report to the board, I've got to deliver the numbers, but it's how you deliver the numbers and how you are able to ensure your team is learning, delivering on their expectations, delivering on their performance goals, but also doing it in a manner where they feel empowered, they are learning, they have a voice, and there is a leader that's really invested in shaping them and mentoring them and coaching them and cares about their career progression. That's been the major shift for me over the last 10 years is not just pound down the number, the activity, the calls, the dials, et cetera. There's a lot more that goes into being a mature go-to-market executive in this lens of I'm a servant leader. I'm here to ensure that each of the individuals, either the direct reports or indirect reports in my sales and go-to-market organization, all feel like they are advancing their career, they're being coached, they're learning, and also being able to be successful in delivering on their performance goals.
Right. And it certainly differs between generations, and even introspectively, I see a lot with myself and in my own generation. But the big thing I noticed from my generation, even sitting on the sidelines, is the difference of feedback and coaching, and almost detaching and pulling away with negative feedback oftentimes, which differs so much, I assume, from the old school, dial for dollars, don't leave the office till 10 p.m. when you made 200 phone calls. And for me, I always monitor recently and try to be cognizant of any changes I'm observing that honestly may have stemmed from everyone moving to fully remote work during the pandemic in March of 2020 until now, where they try to assimilate back to normal life. And maybe it wasn't much different with you being on the road so much with a large majority of your career traveling, but especially if you think about new hires, those starting out their career out of school for the first time, who maybe doesn't have a manager at a desk right next to them. A year ago for us, we saw the big shift of getting back to the office with our clients, whether, companies lost a lot of employees who were getting higher paying remote jobs or really losing their sense of culture from not being there. I think the idea of the Monday through Friday 9 to 5 feels much more like an antiquated approach than anything else at this point. But especially with an early stage business, I'm not even sure if you guys have a physical office, but whether in person, remote, or hybrid, have you seen a difference overall with your own leadership style and approach as it pertains to motivation and productivity of your team? Are there any ripple effects from the pandemic, or has it been more of just a gradual shift overall?
Well, here at Traceable, we don't have an office. We have no offices in North America. We have an R&D facility in India, which is an office, but we don't have a dedicated office here in the U.S. And that was purposeful, which is we have a highly distributed team. I have 17 or 18 now enterprise sales reps distributed all across the football cities here in the US. I've got 10 business development reps, BDRs, all distributed around the country. I've got SCs distributed around the country. I've got sales ops folks. I've got, channel folks distributed across the country. The reason why we've opted for that model is that we can pull from a much wider set of talent than localizing all of our hiring, for instance, in San Francisco or the Bay Area. And so we've got, BDRs in Idaho, BDRs in New York, BDRs in Boston, the same with the reps. And so I don't know if I would ever see having a 5-day-a-week return to office. I think we've made it work through a combination of the one-on-ones that we do. I do one-on-ones with my direct reports on, every Monday, and then I do skip levels, which are my indirect reports. I do on a monthly basis. We have routine team meetings, syncs on Zoom several times a week. We use asynchronous stuff like, Loom and other video tools. We use Slack as sort of the hub of our communication, and we're making it work. Now, there are elements where you don't have the bonding, the sort of the social and cultural aspects of a completely distributed workforce. So what we do in terms of our sales and marketing and our go-to-market team is every 3 months, at the end of every quarter, the first new week of every month, we assemble, all fly out to a city, whether it's Austin or Denver or San Francisco or Chicago, for a 2-day QBR, where we not only focus on the sales performance targets for the next quarter and the out quarters, and where we can optimize our performance, and what learnings that we can have from the product management team, the engineering team, the executive team. But we also use it as a mechanism for team bonding, social stuff. We go bowling, we go to Meow Wolf in Denver, we do sports events. And so we make it work. I don't believe that we have, to answer your question, I don't believe that we've had a productivity hit. I think we've kept the same productivity pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. But I think we're making it work. I actually strongly believe that we're making it work as a non-office, fully distributed workforce. And now it's very debatable. A lot of other executives believe that return to office is the only way to increase team performance. I believe that there's better ways to do that if you want to keep a distributed workforce.
I fully agree. And I might be one of the more rare ones in my generation or age that, I personally really enjoy being in the office and feel like there's definitely an element that helps me and gets things done. But I think overall the notion and option of flexibility for someone to work hybrid or come to the office when needed, as long as it fits in, not so much with their schedule, but if they're overall the thought of, hey, I'm getting my work done from working from home or not having the commuting time. But I think the big thing is, as you mentioned, there's just so many tools and productivity tools, collaboration software that just makes our lives so much easier now, which almost leads me to my next question being just overall with tools or products or anything. How do you feel about the market for the next few quarters or even looking into next year?
So the jury is still out. There's conflicting sort of analyses of a pending hard landing or a soft landing, whether that is, in fact, a recession. Some banks and analysts say, nope, it's going to be a soft landing, and we're going to avoid one. And then, Goldman Sachs this morning in the Wall Street Journal is indicating that, yes, this is more likely for a variety of reasons that we will have a hard landing in a recessionary event in 2024. Despite that, it's good to pick industries that are and companies that are recession proof. And what is recession proof? Recession proof is something that, going back to that concentric circle, the nucleus of that is something that is solving an urgent and expensive problem is recession proof. It's the nice to have, and there is an ocean of nice to have B2B software companies that have gotten by on the uptick that we had in the market in, sort of the mania, the bubble that we had in 2020 and 2021. Those companies are in real danger. The companies that aren't solving really expensive, urgent problems that are really, do you really need this product? I think a lot of CFOs and directors of finance at enterprises are going to be evaluating their software spend and evaluating their renewals and making hard calls on what is an absolute critical investment versus those that really aren't in the sort of urgent problem solving arena, if you will. So I think there's going to be a lot of sort of product acquisitions, a lot of down rounds, and a lot of companies just going away. Those companies that aren't solving, as I mentioned, very, very specific, urgent, and expensive problems.
Yeah. So Andrew, I mean, as we talk about certain trends or, even the notion around recession-proof types of products or areas of market, are there certain trends that you believe are still on the rise that will be even stronger to next year, or certain things now that you feel like are going to remain really consistent as a core focus of whether cybersecurity or just organizations as a whole moving forward?
Yeah. So look, I've been lucky enough in my 23 years career where just financially I'm in a position where I can invest in seed stages. And so I've got a handful of seed stage investments in security companies that are solving emergent problems. I think in security specifically, I think the later stage companies are going to be most impacted by what's going on in the macro environment. The seed and Series A is where it's really exciting right now because those organizations aren't worried about the valuation of their next round. They're not worried about the pedigree of their next investor. They're just heads down focusing on building something really compelling. And that's, in any given macroeconomic decline, whether it was after the dot-com bust or after the world financial crisis, those are the best times to build really foundationally great products that can turn into ginormous companies. And so I look at this time as, from an investment perspective, I look at this time as really exciting to go find the really early stage seed or Series A companies that are building really interesting new security products that are addressing emergent new problems. And those are the types of investments that I'm making because of kind of where we are in the macro environment and the opportunity to find winners that ultimately become the next CrowdStrike, the next Snowflake outside of security, the next Tynes or Okta, et cetera. The time to do that, to find and invest in those companies are right now.
And it's interesting because I saw a piece a few days ago that even from the boom in 2020 and 2021, there's still been another, I want to say 300% increase in people filing for new businesses in the US alone across industries since 2021, which honestly, it's just exciting to see that even with the tumultuous nature of the market, that you're going to continue to see more and more new exciting businesses emerge. And honestly, hopefully a lot of learning lessons from the past few years on best practices and, with the market as it gets tougher, for better or worse. But Andrew, final piece before we wrap up, I'll turn it over to you just to give a final plug about yourself. And always like to ask folks just to summarize yourself in a few lines to see how we should be thinking about you.
Yeah. So, for better or worse, I am probably one of the most technical CROs, VPs, sales leaders, GTM leaders that you'll meet. And that's just owed to the fact that, I had a CS in business dual degree, and I've been very focused on hard tech and I'm very diligent in the types of companies that I've picked. I've been very successful in working for, a company like Meraki that was acquired for $1.2 billion in 2012. Then another Sequoia company called Thousand Eyes that was acquired for $1 billion by Cisco. And Lacework helped scale that to an $8.3 billion valuation. And all those were through very diligent research and product and customer value driven analysis on the types of companies that I want to partner with, whether it's work for or invest in. So that's one area that I pride myself on, which is being more technical than the average bear. And then the second thing is from a sales and go-to-market leadership perspective is being highly metrics driven. And the way that I approach metrics is I look at, we've invested in a few tools that allow us to look at all of our outbound activity, whether it's a salesperson or a business development rep, a BDR, looking at the sort of daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly activity as it relates to the calls, the emails, the partner meetings, the customer meetings, the conversations that they're having as we use Gong and Chorus to analyze our customer interactions. So there is an art and a science to enterprise software sales. I think a healthy mixture of the two and not being overly artful or overly scientific is blending and having the science or the math of enterprise sales blended with the art of sales, which is the evangelism, the relationship development, the competitive differentiation, et cetera. Having an equal blend of the science and the math with the art of enterprise software sales is something that I also have perfected over the last decade.
Andrew, this was excellent. I think we're at time, but again, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast and always a pleasure speaking. So until next time.